CODERS from Missouri State University presents Classroom Strategies.
Hey, this is Dave Cornelison here for a second of a YouTube video series. This is the Missouri State University's CODERS series, and right now I'm going to talk about batteries and bulbs, but I'm going to talk about links to the language arts, because of course the CODERS grant is interested in how we link STEM content and coding to writing, reading, and math. So if you're going to think about the experiment that I've already discussed a little bit on my first video, if you'd like to look at that, we need to talk about the kinds of things we're going to be interested in when we think about describing our experimental world. So the first thing I'm going to do is to talk about some vocabulary and how you can connect it to things for students. So the first thing I'm going to do is to show you this wire. Now, a wire is absolutely an essential thing to make a circuit, and a circuit is the continual path through which our electricity flows. But let's go to the board and talk a little bit more about the wire right now. So if you think about a wire, you think about what kinds of things are important about a wire and what must the student learn. Of course, this could be from 3rd to 8th grade. Certainly you would have to ramp it up a little bit for the 8th graders as opposed to the 3rd graders. But if you look at a wire, you can see that here's our wire. So there's a vocabulary word. And the wire is made of metal. Now there's some plastic on the outside of the wire, but that's only to prevent us from being shocked. The key component is that the wire's constituent material is a metal. So essentially, for our experiments, and in most cases, wires are made out of metal. So now you've linked the idea that metal goes to wire. But what's important about a metal? What does a metal do that makes it useful to make a circuit? Well, a metal is a conductor, and a conductor is a material through which electrical charge can freely pass. And so anytime you have a circuit in your car or in your house, the wires are going to be made almost assuredly out of a metal, typically copper. Not always, but typically. So the conductor, and why a conductor? Because charge, which we're going to talk about a lot later, charge can move. Charge can move in metals, which are conductors. And so the wires in our circuit are made from this. And so now you can link language arts vocabulary, wire, metal, conductor, and charge can move, and use this to help the students start their descriptions of the world in which they are working. So if they write a descriptive sentence or a descriptive paragraph about the circuit, they now have a set of vocabularies and links between those vocabulary words. Let's look at another one of the elements in our circuit right now. So of course, I have the battery. Now the battery's inside a holder just so we can conveniently make a connection to the battery. But a battery is this thing. What does it mean? A battery is a constituent group of things, and inside it are chemicals. So the battery is made up of chemicals, just like the wire is made up of metal. Now, what kind of chemicals? We're not going to get into the details of the batteries because you might be using a different form of battery. We know there's a variety of different batteries, from the lead acid battery in your car to a lithium hydride battery, a lithium ion battery, a metal hydride. There's a whole series of batteries. So don't worry about that, but worry that the students understand that inside a battery are chemicals. That is true. The chemicals must do something, just like the metal is a conductor, so the chemicals have a reaction. There's actually a chemical reaction occurring inside the battery. And it's fairly complex, but the students, of course, don't necessarily need to know that. Maybe the 8th grade students might want to think about that a little bit more. And of course, just like the conductor allows charge to move, so the chemical reaction can push the charge. So it is a constituent element of the circuit, which is absolutely essential. If we have only wires, we've got nothing. And if we have only batteries, we have nothing. And if we have batteries and wire, we can have something. We can have a circuit. So now let's talk about the last element real quickly. And the last element is the bulb. Now, of course, the bulb is an interesting beast in its own right because it's made up of more than one kind of material, and it's very peculiar. So there's going to be glass, typically, and metal. Now, in this particular case, The metal is the important thing. The glass is protective. The glass is to prevent the metal from being in contact with air. It does not participate in the scientific experiment we are doing except for protection. The metal is very difficult to see, but in between two little posts, there's a tiny, thin piece of metal. And we already know that metal allows charge to move. So what's the difference between this wire, because the bulb has a wire in it. So now you can link bulb and wire. What's the difference between the wire that we started with and a bulb? The bulb's wire is very thin. So the characteristic is the metal is that the thin metal gets hot. So that's the difference between the wire, which is supposed to carry the current, the charge flowing, but it doesn't want to get hot. We do not want that wire to get hot, but this wire, the thin wire inside the bulb, we wish to get hot so that it can produce light and in some cases heat, depending on the circumstances. So now you have a series of vocabulary words that certainly for the lower elementary grades you can use to help the students build a narrative about the world in which they are operating. This is Dave Cornelison for the first of the STEM content language arts links videos for Missouri State University Coders.